Brothers and the occasional sister join us down the Broadcheck Club. I'm going to play you 4 notes on the guitar, and I reckon that a few of you will know what the song is just to these 4 notes. Because our human brain is just so good at putting stuff together like that. And if you didn't get it, I'll give you a clue. Here's another 4 notes. Got it yet? I better stop playing it, otherwise the algorithm, or the AI at least, will pick it up and I'll get a copyright strike. Stairway to Heaven, a song I used to play all the time in Europe, and a song that I still love to this day. Anyway, we're in St. and I've met this beautiful woman, Danny, and Danny was a Lufthansa stewardess, an international stewardess. She just took my heart, boys, and I decided that I would jump on a train and head to Frankfurt again, because she had a apartment there. So the following day after being with her, I said, hey, be okay if I come and visit you in your apartment? And she was like, yeah. So we hatched a plan. I did a few gigs around the place, and then the following week I headed to Frankfurt. When I got on the train, I took a break halfway there and I stopped in a town called Kaiserslautern, and there was a lot of military guys around. This was the time during Sierra Leone was having a lot of upheaval. The Revolutionary United Front was causing absolute havoc. There was a lot of civil unrest about the inequality with people rich and people poor. The diamond wars were going on, and terrible atrocities were going on. We, in fact, in New Zealand were taking refugees here, and the atrocities often involved people having their hands chopped off or their feet chopped off. There was a lot of that horrible stuff going on. I was in Kaiserslautern stopping over at the train station for a break, and I had 3/4 an hour to fill until the next train connected me up to my train going to Frankfurt. And while I was taking my break, I watched this black man, working away, cleaning. He was cleaning the whole area beside me, and I just put a table and chair out. They had some tables and chairs. I just pulled some out into the sunlight because it was winter, and I had my coffee there, and watching this man diligently work very, very hard. And I thought he was probably about 50 years of age. He looked that sort of age, and I noticed he only had one hand. His left hand had a hook on it, and he was sweeping. He looked at his watch and pushed something on it and sat down at a table beside me and put his head on his hands like that and went straight to sleep. I was amazed by how quickly he went to sleep. I didn't think much of it. I drank my coffee and time went by, and about 15 minutes later his watch went. He sat up, smashed his face like that there, turned his watch off and carried on brooming. I thought, wow, that was a pretty impressive power nap. I wish I could do that. I said to him, hey, sir. He looked around at me and smiled, big smile. I said, what's the trick? How do you go to sleep that quickly? I wish I could do that. I don't get a lot of sleep on the road. He said, you want to know the trick? I said, yeah. He said, work 24 hours a day, 6 days a week. And I said, yeah, right. And he just kept on sweeping, and I realised he was actually telling his truth. I said, do you really work that hard? He said, yep. I wanted to get his story. I said, do you mind if I get your story? Can I ask some questions? He said, feel free. I said, why do you work so hard? He said, well, my family are back in Sierra Leone. My daughter was murdered. My wife was mutilated. And I came over here to make money, and I'm saving to buy a camera. I said, a camera? What do you want a camera for? He said, I want to go back and I want to document everything. A camera's a lot of money. He said, I also want to put money to my family so that they can get ahead. I said, that's very admirable, but you work 24 hours a day? That's not possible. We've got to sleep. He said, I do sleep. You saw me sleep just now. He said, I sleep at every opportunity I get. I get a 15-minute break in the morning and a 15-minute break in the afternoon. I get a half an hour for lunch, and that's when I sleep. I said, well, when do you eat? He said, once a day. I said, and you do this 6 days a week? He said, yes, all Sunday I sleep. I said, what are your other jobs? He said, the other job is I work at a video place where we used to have videos back then. We don't have them today, these big reels. And he said, I work in a place where they hire these out, and I do an 8-hour shift doing that. I said, what about the other 8 hours? He said, I flip burgers. And I said, really? He says, really. I was really amazed. His name was Yarb. I asked him his name and we shared names and talked about stuff. I still had half an hour before my train came, so this was an interesting story to me. And I said to him, when will you be going back to Sierra Leone? He said, in 3 months, and then I'll come back over and I'll work more. And I'm going to give my photos, and because it was the very beginning of what was going on, I'm going to give my photos or sell them to different people and get the word out what's going on with the Revolutionary United Front, the RUF, I think it was called. Somebody correct me if that's wrong. It's just what I remember it to be. I think that's right. I said, well, that's incredible, really. I said, how old are you? He said, 27. I was shocked. I was absolutely shocked. I thought he was about 50. I said, you're my age? He goes, yeah. He had grey hair, he had big dark rings under his eyes. Man, he looked old. I said, you can't keep on working like that, brother. He said, I'll go for another 2 years and then I'll be in a position where I can ease up. It was sobering, and I never forgot it. I got back on the train and I sort of felt a bit unclean, a bit like an imposter in this life. Here I was, freely moving around. I'd come from a free country, New Zealand, where there's no upheaval or unrest, and I was just like doing my own thing, and I felt selfish. I thought of this man, and I looked at him as the train pulled out, and there he was sweeping, and I thought, my God. I know people that don't even do 8 hours well, and this man's doing 3 shifts, and he sleeps all day on a Sunday. I could only imagine how hard that would have been on his body. I don't think you can do that. I don't think you can sustain that for very long. So he was getting little power naps through the day and all his jobs, and at night. That's just unthinkable. But that's what he said, and I had no real reason to not believe him. He'd lost his hand. His hand had been cut off by a machete, and a lot of his family had been murdered by machetes. And here I was on this train, in love with a woman, footloose and fancy-free, and I just felt like, man, I felt humbled and I felt deep gratitude that I had this freedom, and I looked at my whole life completely different. I really felt humbled by it. It was like, man. Anyway, I got to Frankfurt, and there she was looking so damn beautiful. Now I've thought about telling you guys, the whole story. And this is my 3rd attempt at doing this video. And the reality is this, is I can't tell you the story because she's the woman that broke my heart. And even though my heart mended, it's still got a scar on it. And I don't want to dig at a scar. I started going back and talking about the things we did, and I had a big fucking tear roll down my cheek, and I thought, man, that's the only time I ever really got my heart truly, deeply broken, and it was hard for me to love again after that. It took a long time. It took me 7 years to get over a relationship that only went for 2.5 years. So I'm not going to talk in depth about her and what we did because I want to keep that private to myself, and you can respect that. But what I will say is she was a wonderful person, and we just weren't matched, and neither of us did anything wrong. It just wasn't meant to be. There's a reason for the season, they say. And I never really quite fully got over it 100%. And I don't think you ever do when you really love somebody. But I have been able to love again, so it's not a bad thing. But it also taught me to not be reckless with other people's hearts. And up until that stage, I've been pretty shocking. I won't say it cured me because I was still pretty reckless, but never the same quite as much. And it was a harsh, hard lesson. And I think every bloke at some stage should get his heart broken. I think every woman should too, just once, just quietly, so we can treat others with that care when we get into a relationship. I think the most cowardly thing you can do is be with a woman and lead her down a path, and she's in love with you if you don't love her back equally as much and give us equally as much back. I think that's a cowardly thing to do. That's just my thoughts, not necessarily everybody's thoughts, but it's my thoughts. So that was my time. So we're going to jump now. We're going to jump ahead a little bit. We're going to jump ahead of that time. And I've now got a broken heart. And let me just pause on that for a minute, because I want to think about telling you guys the absolute feeling that I had when she broke up with me without upsetting myself too much, if I can do that. It's quite bizarre, isn't it, how we can have so many years go past in our life, and it's been 33 years ago since that, and you can still feel just as strong today. At least I can. So the next 2.5 years were amazing. Being a stewardess, she got really cheap airfares. So we travelled everywhere. Greece, Bangkok, Thailand, all sorts of places, islands, and it was wonderful. We ate amazing foods, and she came to my shows. But towards the end, things started to go a bit pear-shaped. I was suffering from myalgic encephalitis, ME, chronic fatigue syndrome. I had it for 12 years of my life. I had it from the age of 20 to 32. It was debilitating as hell. I probably got it from poisoning from methyl ethyl ketone peroxide and xylol and isopropyl alcohol. And I worked for a guy that illegally had me working in a tin shed recycling thinners. That's probably where I got it from. I was pretty sick with that. And I was sick all the time, and she hated me being sick all the time. And I can understand that, because we'd go on a holiday and then I'd be sick. And when I was doing the gigs and the shows, I would use all my energy up on that, and I'd spend all day lying down. It was a battle for me. But I never allowed myself to sink down. I always kept positive, or tried to at least. I'd fight this battle all the time. And I'd often take drugs to do a show. I'd sometimes walk on stage like I had a flour bag over my head. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I just had done a couple of lines of Charlie, because I knew I wasn't going to get through the show without it. Things were starting to deteriorate in the relationship, and I could feel it a little bit. She'd been away. I was living in Saarbrücken, and she was in Frankfurt. And she gave me a phone call saying she was coming to see me, and my hopes got up excited, because I loved her. I was in love with her. And I went out that day and I bought brand new satin sheets for my scungy little room I had. I thought, we're going to make this really nice. I could afford stuff now. I was making good money, and I mean good money. And I'll talk about that later. She arrived and came in, and I said, come in, and I was really excited to see her, and she looked serious, and she said, I need to talk to you. And I said, what? And she said, I want to break up with you. I'm going to leave you. Now, that was a very honourable thing for her to do. She could have just picked up the phone, because we both had mobile phones, but she made the trip from Frankfurt to break my heart and tell me that. And I had to do a show that night, and I was just absolutely devastated. God, I was devastated. And I remember thinking, I can't do this show tonight. I was doing a show in Saarbrücken at the Irish pub. She gave me a hug goodbye and said, we can still be friends. That's never going to work, boys. It's never going to work. I sat there with a cigarette after she'd gone, and the tears just streaming, and I just felt like my whole world had just evaporated. I felt like the carpet had just been pulled from under my feet, and I was just like on my back trying to get my breath. I just felt this horrible feeling of total despair. I never ever felt so bad in my life as that moment. And I thought, I've got a gig to do tonight, and I'm a professional, and I'm going to bloody well do it. I'm going to go down, and I'm going to give that audience the best I can. So that night I plugged in, and I put on my best face and my best act. Hope I didn't play my guitar at a tune like that. I started playing my guitar on stage, and I could just feel this pit in my stomach. It was so hard, but I got through it. And I tried to keep my songs really upbeat. Just try to elevate myself. It was nearly impossible, but I did that whole show. And normally I go around with a tambourine, and I ask people for money, or I'd take my hat off my head and I'd ask for some money. And I really struggled to do this. I did do it, but it was really, really difficult. I went round doing it. And at the end of the show, there was a musician's room upstairs. I went up there, and some groupie, she wanted to come and join me, and I didn't want to be near anybody. I was like, nah. Even though I was now a single man, I just wanted to be alone. I went up there, and I just cried, and I blew a bubble out my nose, and I got a terrible headache. I can remember the headache I got, and I drank some whiskey, and that didn't help at all. And I woke up the next morning, and I was in the gutter, man, emotionally and mentally. It took me a long, long time to get out of it, but what I did do is I kept on playing those shows. Now at this stage, I've been playing with my friend Stuart a lot. We called ourselves Spider and Stu, and we've been doing the circuit, and we were a pretty good duo. We were at the very top, I would say, out of all the musicians on that circuit. There was 450 Irish pubs, which had a lot of musicians playing music every night back there. And in 1993, 94, man, it was just pumping. The whole atmosphere was pumping. At the same time, though, there was the genocide had been going on in Rwanda. I think their president had been shot down in an airplane, and there was huge civil unrest there, and about 800,000 people were killed. It was the Tutsi fighting the, what was the other side? So Matu, I forget the other, somebody right below. The Tutsi were fighting the, was it Hoot? I forget the name. I know it, it's the tip of my tongue, can't recall. And there was a lot of Americans based, like military bases around the place. There was one in Paderborn. No, that was actually English, the one in Paderborn. There was the Kaiserslautern one. There was one in Frankfurt. And so a lot of these military guys were coming into the pubs, and I was entertaining a lot of the military guys. And a lot of them could play music, and often I would get them up on stage to sing. One day I got this guy up, the most unlikely looking guy I'd ever seen in my life, and my God, could he sing. And he was a guy that, he was a tank driver, he drove tanks, and he shared some of his stories with me, which I'm not going to repeat, but basically because they're just horrible. But this person was a hard-ass soldier, but he had the voice of an angel. He sung that song that Tears for Fears covered. I feel it in my fingers, I feel it in my toes. What song's that? Love Is All Around. He sung that on stage, and all the girls were all like falling in love with this guy on stage. And I was looking at him thinking, my God, you just never ever know who's in the audience and who can play, who can do something, what it might be. Now, I kept on travelling around, and the money that I made in that time there was absolutely damned incredible. It was like I had never ever made before. I would make sometimes in a night, if I go and play in, say, Bielefeld, and that was in the Rathaus, which is a big building which holds between 2,000 and 3,000 people. If I played there, if you do the maths on that, I'll tell you a funny story about Bielefeld. 2,000 and 3,000 people, if everybody puts just one Deutschmark in, then that there's 2,000 or 3,000 Deutschmark. Bielefeld, a really cool Irishman called Ray owned it, and his brother equally is called Lachlan. They had this pub, and these guys were cool. Ray was a kickboxer, and he was 7 times champion in Europe. And today I still keep contact with him. He actually came over to New Zealand and he did a bit of pig hunting over here. So he was part of my journey. Really neat guy, and love the man, and he's still going today. So I'm playing this gig, right, and there's a whole lot of military in the front because there was military everywhere, and there was a whole lot of English soldiers, and I had my girlfriend at the time, Anka, going around. She's a new one. I haven't introduced her to the story yet, but she was travelling with me, and she was going around with the tambourine, and it was just filling up with notes. I was making an absolute killing. I was making so much money, more than a man could make, that you would think that a man could make playing music. And all I was doing was entertaining the audience, but I had the whole place absolutely pumping. I would always give the audience, I'd always give them the words. If I was doing a song like a Beatles song, yesterday, all my and I would just go, it's the audience, and the audience would sing it, and I'd play it on the guitar, and they would sing half the song. Or if I was doing a song like, anybody got that one? I said, hey baby, I wanna know, will you be my girl? Audience, and they would sing it, and I'd just play it. So I'd save my voice, and they'd do the show, and I would make sure I really included the audience in everything I did, so they became the music, and I wasn't the main thing, they were like the main thing. And the energy would spread out through the crowd, and these shows were electric. I was a young man, I had a lot of energy, and I could really play the harmonica. I would do a lot of stuff on just the harmonica. I'm looking around if I've got one in here to show you one trick I used to do, but I don't have one in here, so that's for another day. Anyway, to get to the chase, Anka was going around and there's just so much money, and she comes up the stage and she pours it into my rucksack and then goes around and collects more at the back because there's two parts of this pub. Now I go into the toilet to take a break. I never used to take breaks. I never take breaks. I used to do 4 hours solid, and sometimes even 5. And I once looked online when I got back to New Zealand years later to see what the longest concert were. And at that time when I was there, it was Bruce Springsteen. I think it was 5 3/4 hours. I'd often done concerts that long, but I'd even done longer when I'd done festivals. So I was very musically fit. My lungs were really good. I could hold notes for long, and my fingers were what got cane the most, and I would change the strings of a guitar every day. I wasn't using a guitar like this is nylon, I was using steel string. So I was very, very stage fit, and I would be generating this buzz in the place. So this particular day I took a break and I went into the toilets, and I went in there, and when I was in the toilet I was just absolutely exhausted taking a break. I was just having a pee. I wasn't taking a dump or anything, but I was just sitting there relaxing just for a minute, getting away from the crowd, just relaxing and just zoning out. And I hear these two officers come in, and one's an Irish guy and one's an English guy. And the Irish guy says to the English guy, he goes, "You know, that guy on the stage up there, man, he's not that fucking good, is he?" And the other guy goes, "Oh, he's all right, I think. He's not bad. He's doing a pretty good job for a chap all by himself." And the other Irish guy's like, "Ah, fuck it, man. I could sing better than that. Oh, my mother could sing better than that. And I could play the guitar better than him too, man. He's very fucking average." And the English guy goes, "I think you're being a little bit tough on him." And the Irish guy says, "But fuck that, man. Forget about that. Think about the fucking money that cunt's making, man. Think about that. How much money is he making? You do the maths on that, man. How many of us are there in our table?" The English guy says, "Oh, I think we've probably got about 20 together tonight. 20 chaps all up." "That's right, man. How much money did you give him?" "Oh, I gave him 5. I gave him a fucking fiver as well. And how about the rest of the lads?" "I don't know." "Well, he's probably just from our fucking take alone, taking a couple of hundred. How much is he taking for the whole pub? Think about it, man. He's fucking rolling in it. And he's a useless little cunt." I opened the door and said, "How's it going?" He got the shock. He got the shock of his life. He goes, "Oh yeah, not bad, man, not bad." I said, "I hear you talking about me." "Oh, sorry, man, I didn't mean any harm to you." I said, "No harm done." I said, "You're probably not far off the point. I'm a very, very average guitarist and a very average singer. But you are one thing right, I am rolling it and I'm making a lot of money." And the English guy says, "Well done, chap, good show. And I'm enjoying your music, and I love your singing, by the way. Don't listen to him." I said, No, your man's right. I'm nothing special. Just a guy that loves playing music. If I was actually really doing what I love, I wouldn't be playing any of that music. I'd be playing the music that I can sing. I can sing reggae pretty good, and I can sing the blues pretty good, but this other stuff, it's not me. And I also like singing my own sort of music, which sounds more like a bloke talking. I'm not really into this sort of music, but it makes money. That's why I'm doing it." The Irish guy looked at me. "I'll buy you a fucking drink, man. You're all right." I said, "It's okay. Get him free here, bud. How about I buy you guys a drink?" He said, "I've never been fucking known to turn down one yet." I said, "Oh, me, what are you drinking?" "Whiskey, top shelf, man." I said, "How about a Jameson's?" "That'll be fine, man." So I bought shots all for the whole table, put it on my tab, because I had a tab, played the night. Those guys, they came back every time I played in Bielefeld, which was twice every month. They came back, and the tips were no longer 5. They were 10s and 20s. Even though they knew I was making good money, they paid for a good night. And I would entertain them. I would look after them. I would make sure those boys had the time of their life. But there was a lot of really, really hard times too. There was a lot of times where I was sick and I had to play. Times when I was suffering the sadness of losing Danny. It took me 7 years to get over her, man. I carried that for a long time. I had other girlfriends, but nothing would wash the taste out of my mouth, the sweet love that was lost. It's just what happens, you know. I think we all at some stage in our life love somebody like we'll never love again, but you do. And sometimes you realise it's not actually that healthy to be deeply in love, because your ego collapses into that person, you fall into that person, you forget about all your friends and what's really important. There's something to be said about being hurt, and I think being sick and having your heart broken. I think every doctor should get sick at some stage in their life so they can learn empathy and compassion. Every doctor should one time have something so they understand what it's like for a patient who's got disease, so they can get it from that perspective. And I think it's important that we all have our heart broken so we can have the perspective of what it's like, so we tread carefully around other people's hearts. I think it is important. So Spider and Stu, we were a duo that played for around 2.5 years. And we came to the conclusion between the two of us that we would make twice as much money as we split up and probably have half as much fun, because we had a shitload of fun together. We would play everywhere. I remember one time Stuart and I, we locked ourselves in the toilets in Castle, in the Irish pub there, and the crowd was going, Tsugaba! Tsugaba! That means we want more, come out more. And we were locked in the toilet looking at each other like, holy shit, man. They were just loving the show so much. It was like such an elation. We never quite achieved that by ourselves, I don't think. As we were together, we're a good team, and we're still good buddies to this day. I still talk to Stu regularly, and he's still on the circuit, still playing. And I put it down to all the vegetables that boy eats. He just eats vegetables all the time. Still, all these years later, he's still playing on that circuit. Bloody amazing. I love the man. And I have a lot to thank for him, because it was that phone call that he gave to me when I was in Baden and said, hey bro, I've discovered this Irish pub circuit. I played on that circuit 3,159 shows on my books from the year 1991 to the year 2005. And I travelled 13 times back and forth to New Zealand. And I set myself up by doing that work, but I also did a huge amount of damage to myself. And today, I've just been in to see Dawn at Motus Health Clinic today, and she's just been working on my chronic sciatic pain that I have, because I stood on one leg and I stomped the other one all the time I was playing, and it made my back go crooked. And I've just had therapy done today. She did some needling, put a needle in, and she pummeled it. And I now have to take codeine every night to sleep, and I'm trying to get off the codeine. So there was damage that was done for how hard I worked. People never really know how hard you work. So when you've got something you've worked hard for, you shouldn't feel the need to justify it to anybody. All you do is you say to yourself, I've earned that and I deserve that. And I know there's a lot of you out there that worked just as hard as me, and some of you that work probably a lot bloody harder, but I work bloody hard. I had friends come over, try to do the circuit, and some didn't even last 3 weeks. It was hard. 1 meal a day. Let me tell you how a day would start for me as a musician, to give you an appreciation of how little sleep and how little food I got. Because I'm a travelling musician. I've got a certificate that Guinness, that means Guinness, the actual drink Guinness, that they put out for Saarbrücken, and it wasn't for the best musician, it was for the most travelled musician. I think I got that in 2006, I've got the certificate still inside. I travelled a lot. But let me give you an idea. The day would start off by the putzfrau. That's the cleaning lady. The cleaning lady of every hotel would come in, and you've got to be out by 10 o'clock, but often they would be knocking on the door at 9:30 with their mop and their broom and their big thing on wheels, picking up all your nasty stuff you've left behind in the room. And I would be generally asleep still at 9:30 or 10 o'clock. I wouldn't be awake, I'd be asleep. She'd be waking me up, the putzfrau. Hello? Hello? I'd get up looking like shit, yeah, bang a cigarette in my mouth. Yeah, I'll be out soon. I'd have my stuff, I'd throw it in there. Wouldn't even clean my teeth, I'd just get up and go. Walk to the train station feeling like crap because I'd been drinking the night before, or something had been going up my nose or somewhere, and I'd been taking something to just do the show quite often. I'd be getting to the train station and looking at my music plan. Oh, okay, so right now I'm in Parmesan's and I've got to get to Trier. I'm going from Parmesan's to Trier. That's only like 3.5, maybe 4 hours. So now I'm travelling on the train. I get to Trier. I get off the train, it might be 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, or how long it was, I don't know. And then I look at the distance. Is it a taxi job? Is it a walk job? I'd always try and walk as much as I could for exercise and save money. And I've got my whole home on my back in my rucksack, pretty much. I did have a base in Saarbrücken and in different places from time to time, but I travelled so much, I was often 3 months before I'd go home, so it wasn't always worth having an apartment. I would get to the pub. I would settle the gear up, set everything. Every pub would have a PA system. I would set the PA up, and then I would do a sound check, make sure it sounded okay, and then I would go and look for my first meal of the day. I'd get my first meal of the day into me, I'd go back to my hotel that I had booked that night, and I'd have a shower and clean myself, and I'd wash my clothes from the night before, and I'd stick it all on the heater. Whether it was summer or winter, it didn't matter. I'd put it on the heater, and I'd turn the heater on full, and that would dry it for the night before, and that would be my silk shirt. I used to travel with 4 silk shirts, so if I was doing four nights in a row in the same venue, which was very rare, mostly 2 at the most, but if I was doing 4, I'd have a different shirt for each night, and I'd travel with 4 pair of underwear and 4 pair of socks, and everything was light, and 1 pair of jeans, which I would, when they were needing a wash, I would actually wash them in the laundromat in the city, and I'd sit there in my undies, and while they're in the dryer, and everything else in the dryer, and they would get clean, and I'd put them back on and wear them out. So now I've gone out and had a shower in the hotel, and got myself ready. I've gone back to the venue. It's 9 o'clock at night maybe. I'm sitting around having a drink at the bar and a cigarette, and I'm talking to the people as they come in. If it's a Friday night, then I'll be starting around between 9:30 and 10 o'clock. They start late in Europe. I'll start the show. I'm saying g'day to all the people. I'm now a single man pretty much, eyeing up the girls. Who am I going to take home tonight, or is it going to be a lonely night? What's going to happen? Who knows? I was a shocker for a long time, I really was. A broken heart, the thing you try to do to mend it is bonk your way out of it, but it doesn't really work. It's a relief for a while. When Uncle was travelling with me, that was good, but she wasn't always there. She was wonderful. I had a few girlfriends that were kind of steady, but nothing really solid. Uncle became solid in the end, but for a long time that was. So I would play the show, and it would be a massive show if it was a Friday or Saturday. They'd be the real big ones. I'd be screaming my lungs out all night, and I might finish the last song at 1:45 in the morning sometimes, or 1:30. Sometimes they would go that late, depending on where I was playing. Some places might be earlier. They might finish at 12:30, 1 o'clock. Then I would go to the bar, and I would take all of the tips that were in my hat that I'd collected in the night, and I'd count it out the bar, and I'd change all the change for notes, because I couldn't carry that many coins. It got heavy. It was a lot of coins, and it might be 500 Deutschmark, or when Euro came to, because it became Euro later on. I forget when Euro came, but I started off at Deutschmark and then I went to the Euro. I would change all the money, and I would then go back to my room, and I have to get back with a taxi or walk, depending on where it was. The one meal that I would have would be after I'd had my shower generally, or sometimes before the gig. So that would be my meal of the day normally. So I was only getting 1 meal a day. There wasn't time. Sometimes I might buy something travelling. One of the meals I used to often buy in Germany was Currywurst. That's sausages that are curried. So I'd play that show, and maybe someone would come back to my room, maybe not. More often somebody would. And that was the cycle. And then I would be getting kicked out of my bed. Like, I might get to bed sometimes at 3 or 4 in the morning, and sometimes even later, depending on who I was with or entertaining. And then the cleaning lady, the putzfrau, would be kicking me out. Hello, coming in at 10 o'clock. So sometimes I only get like 4 hours sleep, or even 3 hours sleep, depending on what time I got to bed. And this just went on and on and on and on. And I wasn't really taking looking after myself. I was smoking, I was drinking, I was taking drugs. I was a terrible diet. Mostly I would eat sauerkraut with a chicken most days, so I had some protein, I had some vegetables, and that was pretty much it. It wasn't very healthy. And sometimes I would cook food on the way. I used to travel with a little fishing rod, a little fold-up job, but when I started playing music, I never hardly had time to go fishing anymore, so it was just like work, send the money back home, work, send the money back home. And for 13 years, I did that. There were times when I was really at rock bottom and I just thought about giving up. And there were times where the elation was so high, like when I was playing on television for Zat1. I did a TV show called the Wochenspieler, that means weekend show or weekend play. A guy called Uwe Becker, he was his name. Uwe Becker was the presenter, and I was on television. And it wasn't like in New Zealand where you're on TV and there's like maybe 2 million people seeing you. This particular show got viewed 15 million times on a Sunday, so it was a big audience. But the shows weren't where I made the money. Where I made the money was in the Irish pubs. That's where I made the money. And then the guys that owned the Irish pub, they started developing pubs in different countries and different places. And they built pubs in Greece and Poland and all around there. And I ended up playing in the island of Crete in a pub in Starlita, or it's also known as Starlos. And that's where I met my children's mother, the woman that gave birth to my daughter. Yeah, my firstborn child. Anyway, I think I've told enough of this story today. It's been going on for a while, and I'm not going to probably edit this one. It's probably going to come straight off the phone. Brothers and the occasional sister. I'm not sure what the next stories I'm going to tell you are going to be. This could be the final one, because a lot of the stories that happen in Europe, I like to keep a lot of it to myself, eh? But I will come back with plenty more throwbacks for you soon. Go steady. If you know a brother that's struggling, share the story. It might help him. Might help him get to sleep at night. Might help wake him up. And have a thought. Have a thought. Hiyab, who was like working 3 shifts, 6 days a week. If ever you're feeling weary, know how weary you can be. Go steady. See ya.